Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us and watching us. I'm talking today with Dr. Lonnie Wesley. He's the pastor of Greater Little Rock Baptist Church here in Pensacola, Florida. And he will be in conversation with Dr. Terrell Carter, who is the executive director of RISE Community Development in St. Louis, Missouri. And so welcome to you both.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
And today is the day after the National Day of Prayer, something that for a lot of Christians in the United States is a very major day. I've been reading a great deal about it. So let's look at this. What does a National Day of Prayer mean to you? And I'll start with you, Lonnie. What does it mean to you? And just tell us a little bit about how this works.
Well, I can tell you about how it works, of course, from my point of view. First, the answer to your question is it's very important to the Christian, period. Prayer is what we are supposed to do. Men ought always pray, says the Bible. And so that's what we do. We understand that prayer is a communication with God. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street between us and God, God and us. We talk to him. We have the privilege to talk to him. And Lord willing, we have the good sense to be quiet and listen to him talk back to us and give us direction. Prayer, not only for direction, but for comfort. I mean, wisdom. We understand, we Christians understand we need prayer, and to have a National Day of Prayer gives us an opportunity, when I say us, Christians, an opportunity to engage in prayer in a more holistic manner. And that, for me on yesterday, it gave rise again to share with a church across town, Olive Baptist Church, which is, of course, pastor led by my dear friend Ted Traylor. And they have an annual program to highlight the National Day of Prayer with subjects of prayer. And he asked me to come over yesterday. It was beautiful, man. I had an awesome time. He asked me to come over and pray for our region, our city, our county, this entire Northwest Florida region, and following individual prayers under the tent and around the tent area that everyone did together. I then walked up to the microphone and prayed one prayer on that same subject. So it gives us the opportunity. The National Day of Prayer gives us an opportunity to pray together. It highlights the need for prayer. It's great, man. It's great. I don't want to talk too much on it, Henry, but it's great, and it was great to participate in that matter on yesterday.
So yesterday, I did not participate in any National Day of Prayer kind of events. Instead, I participated in a day of admission. I can't think of a better word of saying that, a better word or better way to say that. So I am a pastor in St. Louis in addition to being the executive director at RISE. But I'm also affiliated with an organization called ChurchNet. And it's a historically Baptist organization that started out as a Southern Baptist, or started out as a break from the Southern Baptist Convention. And instead of doing a National Day of Prayer, we had our annual meeting, and the theme of the meeting was white repentance. And it was looking at recognizing how Baptists in Missouri have contributed to racism and slavery, and not living into what the gospel is. Now, they didn't do that to just go say, hey, all white people are bad. That was not what they were doing. What they were doing was trying to say, all right, our nation is at a particular place. We understand the gospel and God's word to be about this. We can't hide from this anymore. We can't just whitewash it. And I use that phrase intentionally. We cannot just whitewash history and act like this has not occurred, because every time we do that, we are minimizing the pain, the frustration. We are just minimizing the lives that are being lost on a regular basis. We are minimizing and making sure that progress is not made. So instead of having or participating in something, their prayer, I participated in that yesterday, which to me was even more meaningful. Now, I'm not disrespecting the day of prayer. I don't want to sound like that. Obviously, I believe wholeheartedly in prayer. I participate in it every day. I take 2 seasons every year to fast and pray for a month, specifically, for God's direction and for whatever's going on in my life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying but it was even more beneficial to me yesterday to have experienced that. And prayer was obviously a part of it. And ultimately, what they were asking people to do was pray, number one, a prayer of confession, prayer of repentance, and then pray a prayer of healing and reconciliation. It was not politicized. It was just simply, here goes what the facts are. Here goes the names, or here goes some of the names. Here goes some of the things that occurred and the impact that they have made. And here goes how we can do something tangible right now. We can't pay people back. We can't undo history. We can't. But what we can do is acknowledge, we can repent, and we can then be quiet and listen to those people who have been most adversely affected. So that was a beneficial thing for me to see. And it's, something that is now recorded and saved for posterity, that anyone who goes to the website, which is churchnet.org, can go and see that service. It was primarily 4 white pastors, all in conversation about how their congregations have tried to listen and learn and to be a positive influence, or at least not to get in the way of reconciliation efforts.
Terrell, how close is Ferguson to where you are?
Brother, I could probably hit a 3-wood or a driver to it. It's a little further than that, but it's within minutes. It's within 15 minutes of the city of St. Louis. So it's if the city of St. Louis is the core, then it's second or third outer ring outside of St. Louis.
So if it's a good 3-wood from you, then was this what you just talked about in place before Ferguson hit the world map?
No, actually, this all started to happen because Ferguson, like the rest of the world, and I'm going to use the phrase intentionally, the rest of the world is a place to white Christians. To them, to these 4 pastors, they all kind of acknowledged that it took something like Ferguson to really make the world, not necessarily them personally, but their congregations and their cities realize that something was going wrong and it had to be addressed.
Man, that's beautiful.
Just ask. I want to emphasize here, Terrell. You have been a police officer in St. Louis, so you have a how shall I say, a multifaceted view of this.
I do, and Ferguson is unfortunately one of the linchpins in the history of the St. Louis region that shows that we do not value all life, and not just Ferguson. That particular incident in Ferguson is just one of a litany of things that have occurred, and that was in 2015, if I remember, 2014, and it's 2021. We just had 3 police officers that were found not guilty of beating another police officer, a black police officer who was undercover. And part of the incident was recorded. You had multiple other police officers from the city of St. Louis testify against their co-workers, and the jury still found them not guilty. So yeah, I don't come to these kind of conversations just as a black man or as a pastor. I come as one who has been a part of the system and left the system because it wasn't in the first place, it wasn't even created to help people like us. And that when people, and I'm going to continue to use these very broad terms, when white people hear me say something like that, they think I'm being overly, sensitive or a lot of hyperbole, and it's not. All you have to do is literally look in our history books, look at our laws, look at, the things that were written that founded our country. There's a book called The Broken Heart of America, and it gives the history of the founding of the city of St. Louis and how its founding reflects how our nation has operated since its inception. And the simplest way to put this is the city of St. Louis was founded by stealing land and murdering Native Americans, and by making sure that they did not have the opportunity to come back or to regain, their land, and by using slave labor to develop the city, and to make sure that those slaves were controlled very specifically. And if they or anyone who supported those slaves tried to make the system change, they were dealt with in the most drastic ways. Most of the time, they were killed. So so I come to these conversations as a Black man, as a pastor, as a former police officer, and as a researcher of, race and race relations, especially how it plays out in the church. And I'm sorry, Lonnie, you were going to say something just a few moments ago.
No problem. I mean, I'm loving listening to the history, but I mean that's the history of our country. I mean that's the same history of many cities and many states, here, and it is, period. That's without a doubt.
Well, the challenge, though, and I want to say this so people can hear this. The challenge is, how many of us know that? We just automatically assume that because we are two Black men, that when we bring these things up, oh, you're bringing this up for a political reason, or you're bringing this up because you don't want to work hard enough, or you're bringing this up for, it's very rarely recognized of the impact that all this has in the structure of a city, the structure of a community or a neighborhood, the structure of a company and an economic system. None of those things are ever acknowledged. It's always made into being something individualistic versus this is how the system was created, and these are the effects of the system, and we have to change the system in order to affect all those different things. But no, instead, we would rather look at the individual persons and say, you're just not working hard enough, you haven't played the game well, versus recognizing all these other things. I'm sorry, Lonnie.
Oh, no, that's okay. Dr. Terry Turner, I believe he's pastor emeritus now, former pastor of Mesquite Friendship Baptist Church in Mesquite, Texas. He wrote a book that addresses exactly what you said. It looks at the impact, even now today, of those things that happened so many years ago. An impact that's not so easily brought into, and definitely not so easily to get out of. But I was going to say, for me, again, and I don't know if I'm preaching to the choir or you're preaching to the choir. To me, it's not about that. But to me, this is the kind of conversation and the kind of enlightenment and even the kind of admission that we all need to face and converse about in order to be able to find a solution. That's what those four white pastors, I believe, are all about, that you just mentioned. They're about face. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's converse around the table, arm in arm, hand in hand. Let's look at it. Let's talk about it factually. Okay, well, oh, by the way, while we're sitting down talking about it, we're getting to know each other better. And because we get to know each other better, we can see different viewpoints from different views, if that makes sense. We can hear things that we've never heard, and we'll find ourselves now saying things that we've never said, whether it's in the form of a question or a statement. I'm loving it because to me, it's setting the groundwork that you and I should follow, that our friends who are Black as well as our friends who are white should follow, to say, okay, let's get together more. Let's talk about it more. How do you think Ted Traylor so easily and so readily picks up the telephone? He pastors 8,000 people, 7,000 or 8,000 people at Olive Baptist Church. It's the largest church from the Florida, Alabama line, Northwest Florida, to Tallahassee. So how do you think he so easily can pick up the phone and say, hey, Lonnie, I really want you to come and participate in our celebration of the National Day of Prayer. He couldn't do that unless we've broken bread together and have linked up together. He's been over here and preached for me at Greater Little Rock. I've been over there and preached for him at Olive. We've gone to lunch. We've gone to dinner. I know his wife. He knows mine. I know his son. He knows my children. So it's to me, it's beautiful, brother. It's beautiful. The fact that you at the table with people who didn't start off as being like-minded, but to sit down together and say, look, here's the situation. Let's look at our history. Let's look at where we are now. And quite frankly, I hope and pray that I can be that kind of catalyst here in Pensacola, man, because everybody wins when that happens.
Yeah, no, you're right. Not just so each one of those pastors is 3 of them are personal friends of mine. One I am starting to build a relationship with, or I've requested to build a relationship with. And I found I entered into a relationship with each of them at various points. And it just so happened that over time, again, they all wanted to have the question. All wanted to have the conversation. They all had questions. And eventually they sat, I had a chance to meet with them again individually, and then eventually had the chance to participate in a larger conversation with them, and then eventually was allowed to or invited to speak to their particular community, and then to strategize on doing even more than just that. One pastor who lives in Kansas City invited me to come give a lecture to his church and show some artwork that I made. And the artwork was not happy-go-lucky artwork. After Mike Brown was shot and killed, I made a series of prints and paintings called The Good Negro. And you and I understand what that phrase means, but for the people who may be listening who may not, if you call a Black man a good Negro, that is not a good phrase, to say the least. My grandfather would say, we're about to have some furniture movement. You ever call me that? Because what you're saying is you're calling that person compliant, that, they're a good boy.
Yeah, he knows his place.
That's a really good way of saying it. He knows his place.
Knows his place, that kind of ignorant stuff. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So I made some artwork in protest to that, or in response to that. And like some of the images where a good Negro knows his place and stays in it. A good Negro knows that he has to make white people comfortable in order for his life to be comfortable. A good Negro does not covet a white man's wealth, women, or property. So imagine me walking into this room with these art images to show this group of white people, and then to give them a history of, art and theology and whatever. Because I'm also a college professor. I've been teaching on the college level since I was 20 years. But imagine me doing all this and giving them a lecture that covers all these things. And again, all from a Black perspective. And that was just the beginning, though. And we were able to do even more together. And like I said, 2 of the other pastors, I've been able to do more with them. And one of the pastors, I'm just hoping to build a solid relationship with. But that was the foundation, the springboard, and they've all gone on. So I just want to make sure I give them credit that it wasn't me. They already had these questions. They already wanted to have these conversations before they met me. And, the Lord blessed that I was able to be a part of that conversation. But I agree with you. You are completely right. We need to have more of these conversations. The question is, how do those conversations lead to solutions, though?
Yeah. Well, I really strongly believe that when that relationship is fostered and when it's reinforced, man, the Lord just blesses in ways that we can't fathom ourselves. The solutions come out of relationships, and I believe that's on every level. The mayor of St. Louis, whomever he or she may be, I think that person would be wise to build relationships with people who are not afraid to tell him or her the truth, and watch how the city would change from that. And that's to me again, that's on every level. That's for every city. That's for every county. That's for the country. That's it's not just on a micro level, but it's on a macro level as well. Relationships are key, and
Is it just relationships, or is it more to it than that? I want to give you an example, and I'm asking for you to respond to this because you are in Florida. The pastor of the church you just mentioned is Southern Baptist, if I'm understanding correctly. Within the last several months, the presidents of the Southern Baptist Convention seminaries decided to release a statement that says that critical race theory is against the gospel. Did you ever see that, or did you hear about that controversy?
Yeah, I both. Yes to all of the above. I've seen it, heard about it, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that I found most interesting was when they made that decision, they were all in a room together, and apparently no Black people, no people of color, no women were a part of the conversation at all. And so and it's not to point fingers at them because I don't know them. I'm not trying to harp on Southern Baptists, but we talk about relationships, having conversations. Where were the conversations that should have sprung out of those relationships that they had? You can't answer that question. I'm just using that as an example, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't want to take up too much time on that, but by way of an answer, that's what you are bringing up is one of the problems that Ralph West had with it. He had several, but that's one of the problems. And I haven't talked to Ralph since then. I received my doctorate from Anderson University. And so Ralph came and he was one of our speakers there. And plus a dear friend, he and I shared a friend, one of his classmates from Bishop is Bernard Yates. And so Ralph would come and preach for Yates here in Pensacola. And so I haven't spoken with Ralph since. But when I see him again, Lord willing, I want to ask him exactly, just his, just one-on-one and just around the table, shooting the breeze, to go deeper in that, because I agree with him, like I'm agreeing with you. For that statement to be made, it's in that manner, came across as four good old white boys who don't care about what anyone else says. It pushes a narrative of a tradition gone by that's dying hard, that's dying slowly, and we're trying to hold on to it so that we can keep certain people away from certain things. And that's not what that's not a good look for or from or on the church. Whether anyone agrees with what they said or not, I hope we all can agree that's not what the church wants to portray at all. And so again, in just an answer to your question, that was bad. I don't think that's defensible. To go even deeper into what they said, that's not defensible either. So I don't know if any of those pastors have come out and expressed any kind of remorse or any kind of made any kind of statement of saying, we need to go back and revisit this. But it was a mistake not to have anybody else at the table. And they know Ralph. Just to use
it's not just Ralph. One of the past presidents is an African-American guy who's a really conservative guy. And I don't say that disrespectfully. There are people within the denomination that you should be able to look to, but that also tells me what they think about those Black leaders within the denomination as well.
Brother, you don't know how much I love that past president. He wrote the foreword to my book. So
I know that. I saw that.
Yeah, he's a personal friend, and he is as strong on this subject as you and I, if not stronger. Well, Dr. Luke, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. One of the things I noticed, though, do you remember when he became president? Within the first couple of weeks, people started publicly speaking out against him and the actions he was doing, and I was like, wait a minute. So I've served as pastor of 2 Southern Baptist churches before. I'm not Southern Baptist. I just go wherever the Lord calls or wherever the door opens, whatever the correct way of saying it. So began to learn the policy, the politics. But I started researching the history. It's like, wait a minute, nobody has ever done this. When like 2 weeks into a president's service and everybody's coming out like this hard against him and saying, no, we will not do this or whatever, They even treated him completely different than how they had treated previous presidents. And it's him and then the current president, who's the young guy who is not to the left, but he's closer to the middle than most of them. And they are treating him the exact same way. It's just really interesting how that has transpired.
Yeah. So I don't know the best way to say it other than this. A lot of mistakes have been made, and to my friend's credit, the church I pastor, we're dually aligned, both Southern Baptists and Missionary Baptists or National Baptists,
right,
under Dr. Jerry Young. And so I count the blessing to say that those mistakes that have been made have been acknowledged. And then I just as quickly have to say that they're not the only ones who've made those same mistakes.
You're right. You're very right. You're very, very right.
And so, for both you and I know you join me in saying this. I know we just really meeting, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you better and the reciprocal. But I feel comfortable in saying we both will want to acknowledge that nobody is above mistakes at all, especially those kinds of mistakes. And so, for the point of our conversation, sitting down again and building a genuine relationship helps to ease those kinds of mistakes, and to not just to check a box, not just to do it to check a box, but to do it with meaningful, a sincerity, to say, look, listen, I want to be a better representative of Christ. And therefore, I want the people that I lead to follow me as I follow Christ. And that's born out of relationships, man. That's I believe that sincere relationships, godly relationships, and that's how we get those results. Out of everything, whether it's convention or whether it's a city, a county, or whatever, that's how we get those results.
Henry, you look like you're about to ask a question.
Yes, I want to just get a clarification here I believe I know exactly what you're saying, but I want it to be said. This is something I want said very explicitly. This is not an argument over conservative versus liberal theology.
Absolutely.
No, I am not arguing. My arguments are the things that the books that I write, all the talks that I do. You can't tell whether I'm conservative or liberal. It's about relationships and treating people the way that God wants us to treat them, to see them as all being equally created in God's image as everyone else, and living out the great commandment to love God first with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love others as you love yourself. And I think that we fail to do that primarily because we make this out to be a political conversation, to say the least.
Well, and also for Lonnie, I just want to mention in your book, because you talked about the various political things that history in the history of race relations has to do with, but in your book, you have a whole chapter talking about the history and the impact on the structure of the church.
Yeah. I can't say what Terrell just said. My writing tells who I am. I'm a very conservative guy, and I don't say that apologetically. It's who and what I am, and so with that background, yes, it was there because with the subject matter that I deal with this the history of the deacon in the Black Baptist Church specifically. That's a big part of it. That's where it came from.
No, I was just going to say, I think probably I would not exactly call your books liberal in theology. And I'm not saying this either to be against or for or against any variety of theology. I'm a publisher. I try to make my authors look good. But
thank you.
I just see what it is.
Appreciate that.
And I'm just bringing this in here because I so often hear this as, how can African Americans, especially Black pastors, support all these, quotes, liberal things? And as politically, and sometimes the theological side gets lost completely in the public conversation. And I think that's largely on my side in the white church, that we tend to make that distinction that is not so much in the African American tradition.
I promise you, when I'm conversing with someone, not one time does it enter my mind, is he liberal or is he conservative? Is she liberal or is she conservative? Is that topic a liberal topic or a conservative topic? Not one time. Now, what does enter my mind is the fact that the enemy of the brethren, the accuser of the brethren, will love and he welcomes to use the debate of conservatism versus liberalism against us. He loves to use that debate in order to put us against each other, because that's one wonderful piece of ammunition that will keep our mind off who and what we really are, and it's easier to keep us from being united. I could care less what a person's slant is, because at the end of the day, that's not why I'm going to heaven anyway. I'm going to heaven because I'm a believer, not because I slant one way or the other, politically or liberally or conservatively. It doesn't, at the end of the day, for me, I really can care less, because I want to really, I would rather concentrate on a more gospel-centric message, and that's not going to divide me, and not going to divide us. So lest I talk too much on that, that's just the first thing that comes to my mind, Henry.
I appreciate all of that. And what I'm going to say is not going to be a pushback. I hope it comes across the way I'm intended, that it's actually goes in line with what I think you're saying. So I think that there's a large segment of our white population that does not understand Black culture, Black concerns, Black theology, Black whatever, because they don't have personal friends who are Black. Instead, their image of Blackness is based on what they see on television, what they get from certain media groups, all those different kinds of things. So first challenge is they don't understand, they can't even recognize, because they don't have someone in their lives to help them understand, to build those relationships, as you have been saying, Lonnie, where legitimate change occurs. Number two, if they did, what they would find out is traditionally Black culture is, again, this is a general statement, Black culture is more conservative than what white people think or understand.
Wholeheartedly, 100%, bam. Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
It's conservative fiscally, conservative in so many other ways. The point where we typically disagree is the question of race and ethnicity and how that has affected people and how that has shaped our country and what the responses are to that. But the vast majority of, or many of the things that white people think Black people don't like or don't agree with, they're wrong. Now, again, this is recognizing that Black culture is not monolithic, but traditionally, Black culture in the United States is conservative. And you go to any Black church, yep, any traditional Black church rather, you're going to find that out very quickly.
Yes.
And so one, not many Black friends. Two, Black culture historically, traditionally is conservative. Three, I agree with what you said, Lonnie, in that this political conversation helps to take everything off of what is most vital, most important. Now, you've already talked about the gospel. I love that, and I agree with that. So this is not a pushback. It makes it where we don't have to try to come up with those solutions, because, I'm sorry, let me say it this way. Let me rephrase the entire thing. Survey data shows that Black people believe in the Bible more than white people, hands down. And that's not to discredit, the point of me bringing that up is we have all these conservative people and denominations and parties who say that they believe in the Bible, but when it comes to action, their actions show something completely different. Versus Black communities or communities of color, again, that's not making one community better or worse, but when you go to the statistical data, Black people believe the Bible hands down. They believe that it's the word of God. They believe that it's inerrant. They believe that it is whatever the theological terminology is that proves that they believe in the Bible, where white culture, white denominations don't. Again, so what does that tell us? and I'm not asking for you to answer that question, but I'm asking for that for the sake of the viewers and the listeners. We claim, we classify, we portray Black culture in a way that is not true to how it actually is lived out, what it believes, what it holds true, primarily because we don't know any of them ourselves to be able to say, this person has shown me exactly what, Black life is like. I use this example, and I've been using it for the past couple of months. You want to know what it's like to be a Black person in the United States? Go find a white couple that has adopted a Black child and ask them to tell you what their experience is like. Because life is completely different before they get that Black child. And then life for that Black child changes because people have typically a perception of them. But when they find out they have white parents, then that perception changes. And the way that child is treated is changed because they have a white parent. And it's whether it's a single parent or a couple, it doesn't matter to me. The point, though, is ask that white parent or those white parents how that child has been treated and how they have been treated when white people find out that this Black child is now a part of this white family, or this white family has adopted this Black child. And you'll be amazed by the responses that they give.
I don't take what you said as a pushback at all. Being where I am in Florida, we have a saying, where we would say less. I don't know how much out of the state of Florida that saying has made it, but I would say to you, man, look, say less. From my experience, I've found that it's easier for a Black person to be a member of and a part of a white church than it is for a white family to be a part of a Black church. That's from my personal experience, personally, directly and indirectly, in talking to other Black and white pastors in this city, in this county, and around other places. That's been the fact. That's been 100% the fact. That should not be. You're just as educated as your 4 white pastor friends that you talked about earlier. You, of course, will have a different style of preaching and teaching because you are a different person. Your culture is different. I submit to both of you that the music here at Greater Little Rock is different than the music at First Baptist Church downtown of insert name of city here. We do not have a harp or a pipe organ. We're going to sing different. We're going to move with our music. That's just the way it's going to be, baby, because we're different, and that's okay. It's all right. It bothers me still today. I've been here at Greater Little Rock for 16 years now. I've been a pastor for a total of 23 and a half years, and the latter 16 years of that 23 and a half been spent right here in Pensacola at Greater Little Rock. And 14 years ago, it's been bothering me for 14 years. A white family of 4 worshiped with us every Sunday for a year, if not longer. And all of a sudden, I stopped seeing them. And I asked one of the white members of the church why we didn't see them anymore. And he told me, with a bowed down head, he said, Pastor, he said, they love you. They love the sermons. They love the music. They were made to feel welcome. But the pressure had finally gotten to the point where they no longer could take it. Family and friends just constantly on them, asking them, you can't find another church to go to? You can't, are you going to let him be your pastor? How much longer are you going to go down there with them? How much longer are you going to be there? And they succumb to the pressure. And it shouldn't be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. Again, forget the conservative and the liberal stuff. It shouldn't be like that. So I don't take what you said as a pushback at all. I'm saying I mean, that's the way it is. How do we change it? And one thing I know is that we cannot change it if we give up on it. That's for sure. We have to continue to fight that fight to make it right in the Lord. So.
That's some pressure, brother, because we both have been at this work for a long time, and how often does it seem like no progress is being made? And I don't say that sarcastically. It's just the reality that I wrote my first book in 2004. My first book was published my first book on this kind of subject was published in 2015, and I've written 11 more already that deal with some aspect of race relations and trying to help people understand each other. And the question I have to ask is, why do I keep writing these? The one of the books that is in the pipeline for Energeon is a book that on race in the church called "I Have to Live with Them," and it's my attempt to not give solutions, but just to lay out from an African American perspective. Here goes what white congregations, what white believers need to understand about, in general, what Black Christians feel and think based on this particular season that we are in the church in 2020, 2021. So I don't offer any solutions. It's just really here goes what you need to understand. Do with it what you will, but somebody's got to tell the truth. And I hate to phrase it like that. Somebody's got to tell you point blank, when you say this, this is how it comes across. When you do this, this is how it makes us feel. When you act in this way, this is what it means to us. It's up to you to understand that. And part of my frustration is we always are the ones who get asked to come to the table with the solutions. And I get it. We are seeing a certain level of people saying, okay, no, I want to listen. I'm a white person. I don't understand. I don't have any experience. I want to listen, which is valuable, but we cannot do the work for them. I mean, we have our own work to do. We are not perfect. Our communities, our families are not perfect. Our congregations are not perfect. We have a lot of stuff that we need to work on ourselves. And, in essence, we are the ones who have been acted against for so many years. We can't fix this. Somebody else, or the ones who have historically been the ones who have been the actors. It's their responsibility to start, coming up with solutions and trying to figure out ways to, in conversation with us, like you said, in relationship with us, like you said. But I think that part of the challenge is it's time for them to start coming up with solutions as well.
Yeah, my 13-year-old is all of us. Well, he's really becoming fixated on the civil rights movement. He's asking a lot of questions about it. And one of the things he said to me yesterday dealt with how many white people he is seeing and reading about that were involved with the civil rights movement. And I told him, I said, that movement would not have been what it was had it not been for the cooperation between Black and white people. And he looked at me and I said, that's right. I said, we could not have done it by ourselves, but the Lord placed us in relationship, I said, with others who understood that what we as a people were talking about and fighting for. I said, that's why it was successful. So I agree with you. And just like that fight was successful working together, this fight, I believe, will be successful working together as well.
And I got to tell you, Lonnie, that the main problem around in my household as far as pressure is concerned is that Jody wants to go back to Great Little Rock.
Look, I don't know what you're waiting on.
I think actually the problem is COVID hit.
Right.
We've watched you on YouTube, but I have to admit that the experience is not the same.
No, I get that. We're working on it. DeSantis wants to pretend like there was never COVID around in the first place, but we're working on it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, very good music and definitely a gospel message. And I think that gospel focus is something we can all do. But I'll give you each a chance. So Terrell, if you want to start, do we have any last words?
As I think about like last words or ideas that I hope to stick. Part of my calling again is to help people understand those who are different from them. And for my white brothers and sisters, whether liberal, Democrat, doesn't matter to me. The point is to not just listen, but to try to understand. Listen, try to understand, and then be willing to help. I mean, that sounds really simple, but that is a hard work to do. And if it wasn't so hard, then more people would be doing it. It wouldn't have take us so long to have reached this point. People wouldn't be making mistakes like the presidents of the Southern Baptist Conventions by making a huge decision without a person of color or a woman in the room. This is not as easy as it sounds, but to engage in conversation, not from a defensive standpoint, because when we talk about these things, we're not attacking you personally. More than anything, it's the system that has existed from the beginning, from the foundations of our nation. The question is, how do we change that? We always talk about we want a better future, a better change. That doesn't change. That change does not occur without changing the system that is the foundation of everything that occurs.
Okay, Lonnie, you get the actual last word.
Well, I don't know what that means. I'm thinking about what Terrell just said. You know, I was asked a few years ago to be on the ground level of a movement here in the county that would identify and address many of the ills that affect our children educationally, and even before the child gets to education, gets to organized education, and then post education. And on our way to make a solid list, on our way to really solidly identify these things, a person in the room who is highly respected by some said that we have a black problem. And my silly stuff, I immediately rebutted her and said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Oh, I get it. It's the black child's fault that when he gets out of school and his mom is on her second job, it's his fault that he doesn't have anywhere to go to receive some extra help, because she's on her second job. She's not able to be there. And I don't know why she doesn't have family, but that's inconsequential. His dad is in jail because he was found with the same amount of weed that the white guy was found with. The white guy was at home with a warning, but he's in jail because of that. So is the black child's fault that we have disparities in the way that the justice system metes out justice? It's the black child's fault. And I had a hard time being quiet because she and others in the room really felt that way. It's a black problem. So the mindset that it's a black problem has to change. As long as we're living in the same community, as long as, I put it like this and then I hush, man. I don't care who's on the top level. If the bottom level is not strong, the top level will never be as strong as they like to think they are. If the foundation isn't strong, the top of the building cannot be strong. And so I'm praying that we'll get to that point of working together, and so that everybody gets to be strong.
Okay, well, that would lead me to about 20 more things that I'd like you to talk about. But since we're out of time, we'll let that be the last word and try to arrange at some other time to continue on this. I thank you both for all the thoughts. I think this has been a very constructive conversation.